There's often this stereotypical idea of what a scientist is. And I think that's part of what kept me from pursuing science for so long, is I didn't fit in that box. And sometimes it takes some bravery to show up how you are, to be true to yourself, and find the place that works for you. Hi, I'm Jess. I use they, them, and she, her pronouns. And I'm a mental health researcher and a graduate student at the University of Minnesota. I study mental health conditions, and specifically I study something called psychosis or schizophrenia. So that type of word is used to describe an experience when someone is seeing things or hearing things that aren't there, or maybe having kind of unusual thoughts in a way that is causing problems for them or distressing to them. And I study specifically the brain and kind of what is going on in the brain when someone is experiencing psychosis. I come from a family of 5 children. I had a dad who worked outside the home and a mom who stayed in the home. And I grew up in a pretty conservative religious environment. I was born and raised a woman. There were some expectations and I think some stereotypes about what women could and couldn't do. I didn't really have a lot of examples of career-oriented women. I didn't have many examples of women in science and math and similar fields. I entered college as an undeclared major, and I knew that I really liked working with people. I really liked helping people and supporting people. And so I decided to pick up a psychology minor, just kind of as an aside. And I started taking the classes, and just they immediately really captivated me. From a very young age, I have wanted to understand why and how people work. And I've wanted to use knowledge about that to understand myself. And I think psychology brought a lot of those answers to me. I had a mentor, actually in an English class of all things, who pulled me aside and was like, "You're a really good writer. I think you should consider applying for some study abroad experiences." And that kind of put me on a path to apply to a study abroad experience that was very reading, writing, and research intensive, and gave me a taste for what it was like to ask questions and find the answers yourself by investigating. I got to see a lot more of the world and different perspectives, and it made me realize that there were some parts of my upbringing that I didn't agree with. And as I was starting to kind of form my own worldview and my own sets of values and beliefs, I started realizing more and more that psychology and neuroscience was something that just really got me excited and enthusiastic in a way that other topics didn't. My university and my faith community were not very supportive of LGBTQ+ people. And it was something that I didn't really start thinking critically about my own sexual orientation and gender identity until I got out of school and kind of got out of that environment. I realized that I was bisexual. I started also realizing that I didn't feel fully comfortable with being called a woman, with being called ma'am. There were just some things about my experience being kind of known as a woman that just didn't quite fit. I kind of came to the realization that I'm non-binary, and that was a pretty big moment for me because of the gender roles that I grew up with. And it's honestly one of the most joyful things I've ever done, was getting to explore my identity as a queer person. I think that it's really enriched my experience as a scientist because I get to think about what is it like to have experiences that are maybe outside the majority experience, and how do I get to represent my community within my field. So after I graduated from undergrad, I worked as a research assistant on a couple different studies for a few years to kind of get a sense of, is this something that I enjoy and what kind of questions do I want to ask? Ultimately, I kind of landed at the fact that I don't want to do anything other than research because it provides a really cool opportunity for me to ask my own questions, find my own answers, and do something that feels really meaningful. So I am in the middle of getting my PhD in clinical psychology. And as a part of that work, I get to work with people doing psychotherapy, and I get to see clients in a clinic and talk about their experiences, talk about their difficulties, and try to kind of support them through their mental health struggles. And then I also do research on kind of the neuroscience of schizophrenia by doing research with MRI, which is magnetic resonance imaging. And it involves taking these high-resolution pictures of the brain, both at rest to get a sense of how the brain is kind of structured, and actually to get pictures of the brain while it's working, while people are doing a task in the MRI scanner. So we can see kind of what different regions of the brain are activating, and what does that tell us about how the brain is working while someone is using their cognitive control. After I was several years into doing research on schizophrenia, I had a family member who had a sudden episode of psychosis. And it was really devastating. It was a really big shift from psychosis being a condition that I study to psychosis being something that is affecting someone very close to me in a very real way. And it really shifted my kind of professional academic hat into getting to see those experiences up close and seeing why it matters so much that we understand them and that we prevent them and that we have good treatments for them. So now that I am an LGBTQ plus scientist, it's been so rewarding to do advocacy and outreach work because I get to be the model that I didn't have when I was younger.
Often when we are studying human functions, we're studying things that are in the cortex because that's where we do a lot of our complicated tasks that help us get about our everyday life.
I grew up thinking that my main purpose in life was to help people. And I still really want to help people, but I think I've also found room for also enjoying my own life and doing things that excite me. And I also came to realize that some of the things I thought I was bad at, I was self-limiting because of what I thought a woman should be or what I thought my personality was. Even though I don't fit in the box of what a scientist looks like, that's what gives me a lot of strengths. Like that's what I can uniquely contribute to the teams that I work on. The best way to make discoveries and the best way to make an impact is to have diverse people doing the work to actually help the diverse communities that we want to support.